And we are live. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning to those on the West Coast. Thank you all for tuning in and for joining us today. I guess it was earlier this week, or no, it was last week, or maybe over the weekend. Um, my friend Ulrich posed a question. Um, so, for those of you who are monogamous, how does that work? And I was pretty intrigued by the question. And I subsequently, we had a back and forth, and I posted that article to Substack, which you can go and check out on my Substack if you'd like to see it, to see our back and forth. But I said there's a lot here to unpack. Can we do it live? And Ulrich agreed. And not only did Ulrich agree, but I thought it through and asked Anna Rose if she would like to join us and help us talk through the topic of love, of platonic love, romantic love, and all the way around the spectrum on it. So here we are. Ulrich, if you don't mind, just give us a quick introduction. Tell us a little bit about you, and maybe you can tell us like why you posed the question.
My name's Ulrich Ladden. I am a person who thinks about a lot of things, and every so often I will try and get other people to give me a insights that I can't see. When I discussed this with a coworker after we scheduled the live, he was like, "People are going to see this as a meta neurosis because you're thinking about things that they never even consider, so they don't even have a framework from which to begin answering the question." And I feel like that's actually an apt description and applies to many of the things that I think about and ponder. But I am always careful about what I post because I know from experience that some topics people are not ready to discuss. So I'm like, well, let's see if this is one that people are open to thinking about, because I know that the average person probably gives this zero thought throughout their entire life.
That's strange. It's strange to me that someone can go their whole life and just be like, this is just normal. It's normal for me to have, for me to be a man and to marry a woman and to have 2.3, 2.5 kids or whatever the point kids is, settle down in a house and a white picket fence and not think about anything else. That's where I get tripped up. Not the fact that you can get settled down with the family and kids and like the house, but not think about your sexuality in any other way other than, I'm just a straight person in a, heterosexual relationship.
And where
That's
does that come from, though? Like, where do these definitions come from?
colonization.
Pressure come from? Oh, for sure. Well, it's all a product of our environment. So,
Yeah, like there's definitely a cultural aspect there, and that's part of what I wanted to get into. But I've also known people who have thought about it, and they still reach that conclusion that that is where they are. So it's not just cultural. Like there are people that is just the person they are, and I can't. I can't wrap my head around it, so I'm like, somebody who does experience this, give me an explanation for what that means.
Experience what exactly?
like,
uh
I think, right?
yeah, so it's funny because Chris mentioned platonic love,
Right,
and that
right.
word actually is something that I've thought about a lot, but I think about it in the old sense of the word platonic. If you're
As in,
familiar with Plato's work with platonic ideals, so like a platonic circle is the most perfect circle that could ever exist. So when I think about platonic love, I don't think about uh,
That love
love between friends that is non-sexual. I think about
of
love that is
joining.
the the most perfect version of love, which to me means that
Really? Wow.
it's not compacted by a specific definition. Whether it's romantic or not is not part of the process. It's just you love people in the way that works for you and for them. Your relationship functions in the way that it needs to. And over time, the nature of that love may change.
Okay. Well,
But
so
the love itself, so before we jump through that, let me ask Oric, if if I'm not familiar with the Platonic circle. So if you could explain that a little bit further.
I'm not
Yeah,
either.
so
Talk us through
Plato, I'm sure you know who Plato was.
Yeah.
philosopher.
One of his ideas was coming up with Platonic forms. So these were shapes were a primary example. Like this is just the absolutely most perfect example. The a circle that is so perfect there is no way to improve upon it because any circle that you or I or anyone else draws, no matter how talented you are, is never going to be perfect. There will be an imperfection in it somewhere. Yeah.
Right. So
So
how do you apply this to love? Is this in a sense it can be any type of love as long as you deem it to be this perfect love?
uh, yes, but also no, because I feel to me it is limiting to think of love as having a type. There
Okay.
are all to me love is simply love. Like if you
Sure.
love someone, you love them, and the nature
Sure.
of your relationship is whatever works for the two of you. If that is a friendship relationship, that's fine. But if both of you wake up tomorrow and you're like, you know what, that is no longer the bounds we want on our relationship, and we want to change it, the idea is that I feel like you should. The love is it can change to meet the needs of the people involved,
Of
whether
course.
that is
So
whether that
Yeah.
is
it's constant.
you can be friends to
Yeah.
lovers to family and then back again through the whole thing depending on your mood at the time, your place in life, and just everything else. And just instead of instead of being like, this is my romantic partner, it's just this is someone I love. And right now, that is someone who I am romantically involved with.
Right. Right.
So for one moment, I know we had several people join. I kind of want to just back up and make sure everybody knows what we're discussing. So, Ulrich here is talking through a couple of things. He had posed a question, or I'm sorry, Nee had posed a question to me, saying, monogamy, how does that work? And then we had a back and forth, and we started discussing it. We started throwing out some words and some terms, and I think that's part of what we're talking about here. I mentioned platonic love, and when I mentioned platonic love, um, I think that Ulrich understood that I meant the con the conventional thinking of platonic love.
Yeah.
However, Nee considered platonic love as it relates to Plato. Of course, when I use the term, I mentioned it as a love where you care about someone deeply, but it is not necessarily romantic or physical or intimate. That's kind of where I was going. But then I think,
So
of course, Ulrich's question is, how do you love someone and like close the well? How do you stop the floodgates? Because
let's
yeah,
I kind of want to, before we get into that, like break down the fact that romantic love and physical or sexual love relationships, it can be two different things. You can be romantic and not have a sexual
Absolutely.
relationship. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
that's one thing that a lot of people, especially outside of the queer community, tend to kind of equate together. Like romantic means sexual,
Yeah.
and that is not necessarily the case. No. Okay.
Yeah, with that, and yeah, there's a lot of terms here, and for sure, and part of the reason why I engaged in this to begin with was because I wanted to expand my own understanding. Right, other people have had other lived experiences, and they feel differently about things. Um, so, you know, your base question was how do you do it? Well, of course, me, so I care deeply about people, and I also have a loyalty thing, which we touch on that as well in our back and forth in the article. Um, it's really simple. I don't know that I have the desire to pursue another person in a intimate or a sexual space. Um, I don't I might be touching on something like even when I experience someone with an amazing brain and I'm just like, oh my God, and I start gushing, right? It doesn't ever cross that boundary. And I understand how that boundary, maybe from a, and just a overwhelming feeling or an instinctual kind of thing, it might drive you into a physical or a more intimate or a sexual kind of situation. It just doesn't for me, and I don't know if I can attribute that to my culturalization, my environment. Right, we're all raised in the environment where it's like there's a mommy, there's a daddy, there's 2.3 kids, like Onyx Rose was saying. um, I don't know that I could tangibly tell you why, except that what I have with my wife, it works for me. It works for us. We're incredibly loyal to one another, and in fact, my loyalty thing that I have is such that if I were to meet a new friend, and that new friend told me, hey, I cheated on my girlfriend with this other hot person, I couldn't associate with that friend anymore. I'd be like, not cool. You can't do that. It's like, oh well, no, I'm whatever. I'm just playing the field. It's like, no, you cheated on another person, and that you're breaking like a contract, a commitment level, and I don't want to be friends with that person. That's just it's flat. That's where it is. That's my loyalty thing. But um, does that answer? I mean, does that
So
partially answer what you're going for, Ulrich, or do you have thoughts or follow up? I think Onyx Rose wants to jump in too.
uh,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say this is well, I just forgot what you said, but I agreed with
The
you
loyalty
because
thing.
it was what was the last part you said? What were you? What can make it really short for me so I can hit
The
back on?
loyalty thing. If someone cheats, I can't.
Yeah, so I actually just had this situation happen. My a good guy friend hit on my best friend, and this these two people have known each other for years, decades, and I have not been able to talk to this guy. I've not been able to look at him. There's been like, it's just like he broke a certain trust, a certain understanding that all of us have as friends and as a close familial like group.
Mm.
He broke that structure, and so he's ostracized, and I can't talk to him anymore. I don't feel like I can talk to him anymore. He's been forgiven, but not, and it's not my, I shouldn't, I don't know, it's just my own code, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so was that an intentional kind of thing, or was it a mistake? I mean, because I
Oh,
think,
him hitting on her? No,
yeah.
it was intentional. It was intentional.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you have intent, you're like, I know I'm going to do this, and
Yeah,
I know
it
that
was
I shouldn't.
intentional.
That's a
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
I understand to a very very limited degree if someone is not completely in control of their faculties, or if it's like you're maybe
Okay.
maybe it's a situation where it is an impulse control and you're just like you hug someone, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't, like instinct took over or whatever. I don't know. You could say that like that was a mistake. It
I
wasn't.
have bipolar disorder, and there are times when manic that things happen, or in the past, things like theoretically, and in other ways. But yes, I guess you can't like. It's still hard though to say that you can't blame the person. Things may happen, but ultimately the person who has to be in control of themselves. And when they're not, they have to take it upon themselves to rectify the situation.
Right. Somebody could act on a base instinctual drive, but
Right.
if they can say, "Hey, I messed up. That was wrong. That was a mistake," you know, maybe we forgive them then. But when it's an intentional thing and it's like, "Hey, I'm gonna put the moves on you and see what happens," yeah, I feel you on that. So,
Ooh,
Ulrich, thoughts at this point, or
Uh,
more
yeah,
questions?
no, you've actually hit on something that is kind of at the root of my question. So you mentioned your wife and your relationship with her. Um, there was a moment after you met your wife where you realized that you were in love with her. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Up to that moment, would you have considered yourself to have the capacity to have developed similar feelings for another person?
Before that point,
Yes.
yeah, no, I think I see where you're going with this. This was not
And
my.
then, yeah, and then the question then is, did you decide consciously, oh, I have decided that this is the person I love, and so I won't love anyone else? Or was it a subconscious, unconscious thing where you're just like, I've made my decision and now the thought just doesn't even occur to me to feel this way for another person? That's the root of my question.
So, I mean, when I started dating my wife, um, it was pretty simple for me to not pursue other people at the same time, and that was again that kind of plays into my own loyalty thing that I have. Did I look at the menu? Of course, I looked at the menu, right? Um, I I suppose there were potentially moments of interest or arousal, but I controlled those, right? It wasn't I didn't go slobbering after other people. It's it was it's just not it's never been something that I couldn't control. So I don't know how much I paid attention to those moments. Um,
Okay.
but from the point where my wife and I we were boyfriend girlfriend, we started dating. There actually was another person that was trying to kind of get my attention, and it didn't work. And and for me, it was. I mean, number one, I wasn't attracted to the person, and number two, it also was wrong. It felt wrong for me, and I didn't. Um, that's just me, and of course, mileage may vary. I'm sure, um, but yeah, you could put anybody in front of me, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll hang out with you. I'll have a beer with you. We can go see a movie. We could, do some video gaming and pen and paper gaming. Like it would never proceed to a point where I needed that because I already have that. And I don't know how I can better unpack
No,
that. I suppose.
and like you've effectively answered at least your version of my question, yeah, which is for you. At one point, you did make a conscious decision, but once you made the decision, it was just that's the way it is.
It felt
You didn't have to actively make that decision
right.
afterward. It
I didn't.
just it clicked for you. This is my person, and that's That's it for me.
Yeah, I never felt like there was a floodgate that I had to close.
Yeah.
It was all in your discussion of Plato. It was a platonic perfect circle for me because our relationship had an evolution and it worked. It snapped together. That's what the universe wanted of me and my wife, and that's what we made of it, as far as I'm concerned. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe you can expand on maybe how you experience things and maybe how that's different.
Yeah. Onyx Rose, did you have something you wanted to say?
You can go first. I can hold off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I when I meet somebody, when I make an emotional connection with somebody, I can't just be like, "Oh, I you're my new friend," because that's artificially limiting to me. Like, and it's not that I'm actively seeking any other type of relationship. It's simply that the way I perceive emotional love, the idea of creating a false limit is antithetical to what I consider love.
Word.
If that
Word.
relationship is, just friendship, that's fine. And I don't actively need it to be anything else, but I can't just be like, oh no, this is it, that's it, we're done. It's just it is if you're somebody who I've opened up enough to that I can say I love you, then our relationship is whatever our relationship happens to be. And if it changes over time, it changes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But like to me, there's not a wall between those different things. They're all they're all the same emotion, they're just different expressions of it.
Okay.
There we go. That's
Does,
exactly what it is right there.
so just so I can better understand, like when you and I met and we were playing video games, and then I came and I joined you at your wedding. If we threw out culture, environment, societal expectations, all of that, like all if all of that was gone, my loyalty thing, my wife, if it was just you and we were rolling dice and we're hanging out, does it in your the way you perceive feelings and emotions, would that have led to you with our hanging out? Would that have led naturally to like a sexual kind of thing?
No, not necessarily.
Not
It
necessarily.
very much would have been like, and again, there's a difference between emotion and attraction and between romantic and sexual attraction. Uh, Let me give you an example that might make sense. Let's say, remember when you guys came up the second time
Yeah,
and there was some tension between a couple of the people who came up?
I remember that.
So let's say that one of those people had been like, look, I'm just really down and I just need somebody to like vent to and just like I need somebody to be close to. So can we go just hang out? Not necessarily for a sexual reason, but potentially on the edge of a romantic reason. To me, that would be like, yeah, that in that moment, that is what the relationship needs. That is, and as long as I had the capacity
To provide.
within my own emotions to provide it, I don't see any reason that doing so should change the ultimate nature of our relationship. And after that's done, we can just go back to being who we were before. That doesn't have a notable change on anything else about our relationship. It's just the moment called for a different person. So I was the person that I needed to be in that moment. And that's what I seek to be for people I love is the person they need me to be is who I want to be.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a polyamory kind of thing, though it's not also precluding a polyamory
Yes.
kind of thing. Okay. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, how much of all of this do you think we screw up with our societal expectations?
Well, that's part of where my question comes down to is I know culture and society is part of what causes this, but I also know that some of it is not that. Like there are some people who are fundamentally this is just they are monogamous. Like they aren't monogamous because society told them they needed to be. They just are because that's who they are.
There, I would believe that's a really small part of the population. I think that the larger en masse part of the population has been shown generation to generation to generation. This is how it's done, and so encoded now is uh, a, a, a a map of how people do things. When you start looking outside that map, and to be honest and to be fair, let me tell you my situation. I have been partnered up, booed, my bae. We have been married for 24 years and together for 26 years. Saying that I am polyam, but I am monogamous for egg. I have to say it like that. And she understands, though, that if there was ever someone really serious, then we would have to have a talk. And, that talk might be something that may break a relationship. But right now, I mean, we both have this understanding that she understands who I am. I understand who she is. She is monogamous. And she has said this. She can't imagine giving love to another person. She can't imagine splitting as she thinks love. But the way I look at it is you aren't splitting love. I have this endless capacity, of love to give.
That's
To
that's kind of what Ulrich had said at one point. Like,
the
Yeah,
the love
yeah,
is
that's
flowing. Like, why would you stop it at those?
right, right. It
yeah.
doesn't. And so whether it becomes like in Ace word is called a squish, which is pretty much like a platonic romance, like a queer platonic friendship. It's almost like it's a magnet. It's two people like attracted to each other like that, but it's not sexual.
Mhm.
It can be romantic, but it's not sexual.
Oh,
And
according.
yeah, yeah. So, and it's a strong attraction. So when you have it, it's like you can't pull yourself away from this person.
So it's like
And
a courting thing where you want to do things with a person. You want to go on a date. You want to learn more about them. You're just drinking them all in as a person, but it's not actually where like I need to touch boobs or need
right,
to out or anything
Yes.
like that necessarily.
exactly. Yeah. So, and I've been in one of those situations, and it was it it's hard to hide. It's not one thing that you can be like, oh, let me be sneaky and do
Oh,
it, because
sure, because
like
it's consuming, right? It's all consuming. You're
it
just
is it,
you're
it
you're
it really
you're
is, it
besotted
really is.
typically in
Yeah,
those cases for sure.
yeah.
Especially when the chemistry hits. You're just like
Yes,
this person
yes,
like can you're thinking on the similar lines or it's just it's like oh my gosh what is this person thinking now and yeah
yes.
I hear you on the like the hiding it part for sure
Right,
and when people have a connection it's usually an undeniable kind of situation uh,
right.
so
um
Margaret, um, I definitely see that there would be people who would describe it as such,
oh, his
but
obsession. Oh,
to
yeah.
me, obsession has a negative connotation that
Right.
I don't think necessarily applies. If it becomes to the point that it is detrimental, then potentially the word obsession works. But like, I don't think that because of the negative connotation of the word, I don't think it is the best word to use if it is a healthy version of this.
Right. It's yes. It would have to be both parties or all parties consenting. This, like,
Mhm.
everything is done with consent, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's when you get into talking about polyamory and non-ethical monogamy, you lead with consent first. Everything has to be with consent, knowledge, and understanding. Communication has to be strong. So that's where you split from obsession. Is that there's the communication and the consent.
So I would say obsession would almost be along the lines of addiction, maybe, and maybe not the same, but maybe at least adjacent.
Kind of,
An
yeah.
obsession would be like I'm valuing one relationship to a level that actually is detrimental to other life functions, other relationships. That would be an obsession, right? You're
Well,
abandoning others or responsibilities all for the sake of being caught up on, you know, whatever emotions you're feeling with you're the person with which you might be obsessed.
well, right. Once again, I think it depends on the relationship and the consent
Yeah,
factor.
consent from
Uh,
the other party as well too. You're
the
totally right.
um,
If I go,
well,
if I start stalking all
right,
roads,
right.
no, no good. Then that is
um,
an obsession.
Let me ask you two, what do you think about sapiosexuality?
I might
Because
need a definition there. What
so
is?
sapiosexuality is someone specifically who is attracted to someone who has smarts, brains. They're attracted to their brains. They're yeah.
Yeah, it's. I definitely know people who self-identify as sapiosexual, and like I would say that my attraction to people is not exclusively tied to that, but it is definitely part of my attraction. Like you have to have a minimum level of intelligent thought for me to be able to hold attraction for you. Like I could be initially physically attracted to somebody, but if I get to know them and they just
Right,
cannot engage in critical thinking,
right.
it's like,
They
well,
immediately become
nope.
ugly, don't they?
And
Ugly. Like
it really does. It's unfortunate. You can have the most beautiful person in front of you, and they just don't have a fucking clue. And their looks become meaningless to me at that point.
Yep.
Um, uh,
I
Mhm.
for
feel
me,
similarly.
looks have never been the top part. It's always been the artistry, the beauty of artists. Like my wife is an artist, my partner is an artist, and I love artist people and poetry and writing and all that. So,
Yeah, I mean, same thing for me, right? If I see somebody, it's like, ooh, that's a comely person, right? They're physically attractive, whatever. They're symmetrically on their face or whatever. They have an appearance that draws you in, and then if they're suddenly like,
right,
whatever, let me
right.
go get my vape. It's like, oh,
And,
okay, you're ugly.
and now
You,
this is where people are like, now this is where it's more of a choice rather than a, like you're I don't know. Some people view
think like
sapiosexuality as
a
a
choice
negative.
versus like an actual like I'm actually aroused kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
I'm let me pull it up real quick. So sapiosexuality refers to who a person is attracted to, uh, whereas asexuality refers to lack or low level of sexual attraction. I was just looking up asexuality versus sapio. But yeah, so sapiosexuality is it's one of those newer words that people have a problem with, and you know some
Well,
people
I
in
mean,
the community have a problem with it too.
you can't. I mean, you can't have a problem with it if it's biology, right? I mean, if you know,
Well, that's the thing. We have it like sapiosexual is it's more of a it's like who you can be attracted. I don't like they're saying it's a
so
preference.
so how about this? So if I start expounding on something and I I nerd out and I you know somebody on the who's listening to the stream is like, oh my god, nerd bomb, info bomb, whatever. And if they
Right.
start taking it up, like they might have a biological reaction. And if they have that biological reaction, you can't deny that, right? You can't say no, that didn't happen. But I think framing it and
Right.
putting a name or a term on it is, totally valid. So I don't know. This is all space that I think I'm not very informed on. So this is where I'm going to have to, have another live with y'all and learn more about some of this stuff because uh, again, I'm cis, I'm plain, I'm white, I'm boring. I'm the picket fence 2.3 kids, except I have 4 kids.
Right. And that actually comes into where my question comes from. Like, uh, you and I had a discussion about gender years ago, Chris, and why you were cisgender. And your answer was basically because I am.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like, like it's not something you ever thought about. You didn't have to sit and contemplate, is this who I am? You're just like, nope, this is me. And
Right.
I think for a number of people that's how monogamy works.
Right.
They never give it a moment's thought. They're just like, this is this is who I am. The only time they would ever give it a moment's thought is if either a situation comes up in their life where suddenly they have to reevaluate because either they or their partner is like, hey, we need to talk about this, or a conversation like this comes up where somebody's like, hey, why? Why is this how you feel? And I'm going to guess that before I asked how monogamy works, it is not something you ever gave any thought to. You were just like, it is who
No,
I am.
Mm,
correct. Yes, no,
yep.
correct. So I didn't remember at first, but when you kept going with it, I do remember that now when we talked about that. So I think maybe something to think about here is that the rails are constructed, right? That's a construct. That is a societal construct. And for me, I was lucky. I was built into the proper train with the proper wheel gauge, and I just went right onto that track. There was never a question. Like I dropped it down onto it, and I was on my way. Like I didn't
Yep.
have to figure anything out. I didn't have to sit there and make adjustments to the wheels, to the gauge, to the
Mm-hmm.
side, anything else. I went. So and that alone, I think, is probably we call now privilege, right? I I was born and my wiring was such that I fit that narrative construct that our society has built for us. And of course, I recognize now that it's like, hey, what about all the trains with small wheels or different wheels? Or, I mean, there's a train with triangle wheels, right? That like, what track does that one go on? And there aren't necessarily societal railings for that, or
Mm-hmm.
at least we haven't enlightened ourselves enough to allow for those to find their own way to proceed. But talking about that though, and this is another thought that I've had before. People have sometimes said, "Oh, well, everybody's a little bit gay," and that may have even been a topic that we discussed. And if you had to put it on a slider or a percentage, I'm not. I'm not. Like I've had a lot of introspection on this, and I accept that some people might be somewhere on that slider, but I just I don't find myself that I would ever be in a situation where I would be physically attracted to someone of my same sex, and I just
Yeah.
it's not there. Like I'll drink beers, I'll hang out, I'll do a bro hug, we can cry together, but the end of it right there.
Yeah. It's so
That's fair.
as
That's legit.
in as imperfect as it is, the Kinsey scale to describe sexuality, I think the majority of people are are a 2 or a 5.
The
There's a
Ken.
subset of people.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up. That's something that I guess some smart people have unwound and figured out. There's a scale.
Alfred, I think it was Alfred. Kinsey was a sex researcher in the 40s, I want to say.
Okay.
And he went around the country doing surveys and interviews of people discussing sexuality. When he published his paper, he basically said that sexuality is on a spectrum from 0 or 1 to 6. 0/1 is fully heterosexual, 6 is fully homosexual. And I would argue that
Oh,
most people are one step away from that. Like a large number of people are one step away from that. They're mostly heterosexual or mostly homosexual, but there may be exceptions.
they're like a
There
two.
are people who are a 3 that are like right in the middle, but there are also people on the two extremes.
Okay. Just like any kind of bell curve sampling, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
all
Yep.
biology, it's all a shit show. So biology is just
Mhm.
trying to say maybe this will work, maybe this will work, maybe this will work. So you get a myriad of different options, so to speak, I guess. Well,
Yep.
so going back to the original question, Ulrich, the one of the things I actually thought about that has potentially ties into this. We talked about environmental factors. If you look at other animals, right? There is it's survival of the fittest kind of thing. You're choosing a mate so that your line can succeed. We've also witnessed in our own humans and other animals too that there's a jealousy that happens
Mhm.
because of
Sure.
a limited, maybe there's a limited pool of mates available. So I think that's something else to consider as well. That it's and that being more biological and less of a construct. But it's like I select a mate, and because I have selected a mate, I now have to defend that mate from other potential suitors who obviously
Yeah.
also want to continue their line. And so I don't know. I think I had more thoughts on that before when we were, when I put together the article. I'm like, we need to talk about this too. But you know, totally a situation and a probably just a part of the entire human condition and biology that I don't know. We have some animals too that do like multiple mates all the time, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
And I suppose that all just boils down to what that particular critter had evolved into and what works for them for the sake of survival.
I like
That is it.
Margaret in the comments is saying people are too hung up on sex, in relationships, and I tend to agree with that. I understand that a sexual attraction, or maybe not even a sexual attraction, just an attraction is there to begin with when you see someone. But for me, the meat and bones of a relationship, and it should be, and I guess for everybody in the long run, is past the this person looks hot, and more along the lines of this person has these qualities that I like and deem
Mhm.
necessary. And after years the sex may not be there, or after a year the sex may not be there, or after 15 years the sex may be better. You never know. But the like the whole thing of basing a relationship on sex only is a surefire way to, in my opinion, have that relationship end pretty quickly. You know,
Well,
um,
because that's the only value out of the relationship.
right,
Relationship. What is a relationship? It is a mutual contract where I'm getting something out of that relationship, and in turn, I'm somehow satisfying the other person's need as well through whatever it is that they're doing. So
Yeah, yeah.
if it's limited to only a physical, hey, let's knock boots for a little while. If that's the only thing you have to actually share, then you're absolutely right. It's a dead end, because either that'll get old or boring or tired, or I don't know, maybe it's awesome.
It's a valid relationship. That's a
Yeah,
valid relationship. People
Yeah.
can, have hookups all the fucking time. There's nothing wrong with that. For me, it wouldn't work at this period in my life. I did have my hoeing stage when I was a little bit younger, so snap. But no, I don't do that shit anymore. But if in the future it changes, I allow that. I allow for the full range of sexuality to be expressed if and when necessary or even wanting. And I allow that free of being constrained to monogamy, even though I'm in a monogamous relationship. I still, I it's a different way of thinking. Like you're like Chris, you're in a monogamous relationship and you're locked in. I'm locked into mine. Egg is my partner, but we have talked about this before, and I don't know if that. Would you see yourself talking to your wife, like sitting down talking like this, like I'm thinking about wanting to ethically open this relationship, or even
if there was a drive for that, yeah. I mean, she's my best friend, so we would talk about anything. But
yeah, okay,
don't because it's not an interest. It is not
you
likely going to come up. But if it were to come up, like if we were, we both saw somebody and we're like, wow, and like if something happened, then yeah, we would absolutely, we would have a discussion about it. But
and this is one of these things I like to say, that just like being cis het, you don't have to think about it. You never had to think about it.
yeah,
This is the same type of thing.
I'm getting slapped onto the track and everything works, and I never have.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's very very much so. So Ulrich, how do swingers figure into your question?
Okay.
I, having not met many, I don't have. I think generally those relationships tend to not necessarily be the same idea. Yeah. Those frequently are relationships that are based on a physical standard. They're not, and like the other people that are involved are not there because they love them per se. It's just because
Right.
and that that doesn't directly impact it. It does in the extent that like they are a relationship status and group that needs to be accounted for. But I don't think they. And actually, this comes up to something I was thinking about saying. So one can be monogamous and in a monogamous relationship, obviously. One can be polyamorous and in a monogamous relationship, obviously. But can one be monogamous and be in a polyamorous relationship? And my
Yes.
answer is yes, you can. Like
Yes.
you personally can be monogamous. That doesn't necessarily mean your partner is, so long as you have, and that's where part of this comes in. And part of that is that the words we have to describe this don't actually work well to describe it, because monogamy's roots are specifically about, dating, while polyamory is about love. So like
Right.
we the better term would probably be monoamorous than monogamous, but like nobody is going to know that word. That's
Right,
not a word
haven't
that
coined.
we use.
Right.
So, well, I mean, just hearing all of that, and the if we look at the textbook definition of monogamy or monogamous, it's a single partner. Uh,
Yes.
but what you were saying just now is that you could be like monogamy plus in a
Mhm.
situation where as long as consent is
Mhm.
followed, and all parties are consenting adults, so to speak.
Yep.
So if
Yeah.
you could have swingers that still see. I don't know. Like it seems like
So I have friends who are swingers, and their relationship. First of all, my friends who are swingers, their relationship is strong. They've been together like 30 years. They've been swinging their whole relationship.
Mhm.
They understand that the relationship part is the swinging part is not, while it is the relationship part, is not the core of their relationship, of their um, of their attachment to each other.
Mhm.
Um, um,
Yeah, that would be an example of potentially being. They may be monoamorous, to use the term. Like they may only love one another, but they're
there we
they
go.
are willing to. They don't have to love the other people. Like
they
that
don't
Right,
isn't
have
a
they don't
matter
have
of love. That is a matter of other desires that aren't to the depths of love. So like
right,
they don't have to stop caring only about that person to engage in the lifestyle.
right.
so. Ulrich, would you argue that I'm not monogamous because I am willing to care for and love other people? Or is that where you
No,
were going with that? Because
that's part of where I'm going. But see, and that's it. Is I think to you there are strict boundaries between types of love.
that was another thing that we touched on when we were talking. We were talking about
Like,
boundaries. Because you could have, like in the case of swingers, you have people that might have a loving relationship with their spouse, but then
No,
they don't have any boundaries whatsoever when it comes to intimacy and sex.
mhm. But yeah, it's
that doesn't mean there aren't boundaries. That it just
Well,
means that there aren't boundaries in
they have
relationship. And
different boundaries, right? There,
right,
it's
right,
yes,
that would be a better way to describe that.
right.
Different
yes, no,
boundaries, or more concessions with their boundaries for that.
yeah, no. To me, you, from what I know of you, Chris, you are somebody who has been on this. Like for you, romantic and sexual love is one thing, and that is for one person. You can love other people, but like to you, those are entirely different concepts. Like you do not see the love you have for your friends as the same as the love you have for your wife. You love them both, but it's not the same emotion.
Ooh, now see, I almost think I'm not sure. Like I'm gonna have to ponder that one some more, and
Yeah,
we
and
might
there's the other thing. Have
end
you
because
ever given that a moment of thought before I brought this question up?
no, I haven't. Same thing, right? You know, like recently, especially this year, there've been a number of people that have had struggles and things like that, and it being people that I care about, I go and I help them, right? I
Mm-hmm.
get involved, I ask what's going on, how can I help, all of those things, and that care and that concern and that interest is the same care and concern and interest I have for my wife, although my wife is my one, so it's a special caring, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
It's
yep.
special, but it's not any different. It's I don't know. I've got to sit on that, I think, and sit with that and think some more on all of that, because again, yeah, it's very interesting. I hadn't considered it until you brought it up. But so other thoughts or other, I mean, you were trying to put together an article, I think, right, Ulrich,
I
or you
was.
a whole
I
thought?
was, and I might come back to it, especially with the information from this. It might help me flush out some of the thoughts I was getting at. But you, in many ways, answered the questions that I was seeking to answer. Well, you've answered one person's perspective. The thing is, I want to get more people to think about this because I think people thinking about it will be helpful both for my understanding, but also for the people who read it for their understanding, for them
Yeah,
to give
sure.
a critical look at parts of their life that they never gave any thought. They were just like, it is what it is. And now, like, the point of my article was, as much as it was for me to learn, it was to get other people to engage.
Well, you made
Right.
me think. I mean, clearly these are some things that I hadn't considered before. So I value it in that sense. My wonderful, wonderful, amazing love panel here. We're coming up on time, and I know Onyx Rose does have a stop. So I think we're probably going to have to wrap up for now. I think that this was great, a great talk, and very fruitful. And maybe we'll visit this again when it's
Yes.
time. We'll maybe invite in a couple of other folks. We can have a huge love panel, and we can just make it a love fest, and we can dice and dissect everything. But
That might actually be pretty fun. Do y'all have Restream or anything like that? I have a free Restream account, so I can host up to like 5 or 6 people, I think.
what
Yeah.
is Substack limited? I thought you could
Yeah,
host.
Substack is up to 3. Yeah.
Oh, so we're at this.
Right. Like
Oh, okay.
when if it's any more than 3 you see on Substack, it's being hosted on another platform that's streamed into Substack. So with my Restream, I can sub into Substack, Twitch, YouTube,
Okay.
PeerTube,
I think
Blue
StreamYard.
Sky.
Well, I haven't messed with
Yeah,
StreamYard.
StreamYard does the same. Yeah,
Okay.
StreamYard does the same.
But yeah, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you wanted to go. Onyx,
Well,
just oh no, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh,
My thing was
I just
canceled. It's actually tomorrow, so it was my
oh,
bad. Yeah.
we could be poetic for a little longer, but
Uh,
just if you don't mind, tell all the people who are in the stream, tell them about yourself real quick, and just where
Wonderful.
to find more of your content and what you do on
Yeah.
Substack here.
Thank you. My name is Onyx Rose. You can find me on Substack at onyxrose9. .substack.com. I do not write long form or anything else on Substack. I use the notes prodigiously. And that's really it. I use my site is onyxrose.net. That's where you'll find my writing, both short form, long form, poetry, fiction, media, anything like that. I do lives Mondays and Fridays with Wendy the Druid, Trauma Talk, and I have a live tomorrow at 3 instead of today at 3 with the Sturge Writes It Down. So be looking out for that. Yeah.
Awesome, great. And then Ulrich, I don't know that you're necessarily trying to grow your Substack or anything, but
Yeah, I'm not super active. I post notes from time to time when the moment strikes me, and I post articles when I have enough of a thought to put one out. So you'll probably see me around randomly commenting on things, but then I'll just disappear for weeks or months at a time.
a thinker. So if you ever want like a philosophical kind of approach to something, you could reach out to him on the side. And I know we've had plenty of, and only the few times we've been together, we've had lots of philosophical discussions. I thoroughly enjoy it. So, and of course, I'm Chris Resists. Thank you all. Thanks to the folks, Miss Hughes, and we had Margaret join, and we had Evie. We had a whole bunch of the usual suspects that I see here on Substack. So thank you so much for joining and participating and listening in on our conversation. I'll post this up, so if you didn't catch the beginning of it, you can go back through it. But look forward to maybe doing this again and having like a live panel. I think
Let's
that's
do it.
tremendous. So, and I love your fan.
Thank you.
Beautiful fan.
Yeah. Trans inspired. Yes.
All right.
Pride is coming up, y'all. Everybody get ready for Pride. Yoo-hoo.
Yes, indeed. All right, everyone. Well, you all take care and be kind to each other and resist every day when you can. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.